roll call, all present. I believe our secretary might need to leave early this evening, as she is involved in a dramatic production. Do I have a volunteer to take minutes when and if the secretary needs to leave? Okay, so Josh will pick up. Thank you.
What's time? 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. For this approval of minutes, the minutes of our special meeting of October 6th. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Okay, I have a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right.
I also have a couple of items I would like to add.
Yes.
One is just I don't know where to add, or just under communication, that just noting that it's Library Appreciation Month.
Okay.
And also under probably under old business, but perhaps new, just an update on the status of book ordering and cataloging with
Yes.
the director. I noticed today when I was at Little Bookworm, there's a whole
Yes.
fleet of books
Yes. And
that
I
are
will.
not been cataloged.
I will
I
follow
know
up.
patrons have been asking about
Yes.
a couple book titles and we have them, but they're not available yet.
So why don't we, since that's not currently on the agenda but was an outstanding item, shall we say that should be under old business?
Whatever you think best.
Yes.
Sounds right to me.
So that'd be under, would that be
D?
C? No, D, E. Wait,
Um,
F, 'cause it was-
Yes, so if it's under old business, that would be, that we would make that F.
Oh, F.
After
yeah,
EF,
right.
after new director hire, if
Okay,
that's under old business.
And we're gonna call it,
Status of new book ordering and cataloging.
okay.
In absence of the director. I don't know.
Alright, and then I'll second it, it hadn't been seconded, Sorry.
Well, Karen proposed 2 additions. One, just mention of Library Appreciation Month under communication. And 2, update on the status of acquisition and cataloging of new materials under old business. Do you want to just make that a single motion, Karen?
Sure.
Okay.
That's
I have a
acceptable.
question,
Oh.
so communication needs to be enumerated?
Forgive me?
Yeah, make it A.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be A under communication then, if that's what we're adding.
okay, and that is, sorry, library appreciation,
Yes.
discussion of library appreciation. Is that like discussion of library appreciation month or just recognition?
Sure.
Discussion, okay.
Just to mention, although we do have a couple of responses from people that.
All right, thank you. That being a single motion, I believe we need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All right. Are there any other proposed additions to the agenda? John?
Would we like to open the discussion of trying to get a cost of living adjustment or a yearly annual raise for our, for our part-time and full-time non-salaried employees, or should we wait till the director is here?
That was kind of my feeling, wait for the director, and I
that's
think
fine.
we would have to double check with the city about, well.
Well,
what's
we
our
could
decision?
put it on the agenda and then
Okay.
discuss it then.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion to add under new business, the staff salaries.
We don't have any new business, do we?
Oh,
Oh, yes, we do,
Yeah.
okay.
Wait.
Yeah, XI,
Oh,
11.
Number
sorry,
11.
Yes.
We don't have any.
We don't
under
have
that.
any subheadings under new
Yes,
business,
okay.
but yes. So we have a motion to add discussion of staff salaries under new business. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All right, is there any discussion of the
I've
motion?
been fired up for a week.
Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, does anybody else have anything they would like to add to the agenda? All right, seeing no further proposals, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the proposed additions.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved, thank you. All right, next we will move on to the meeting minutes of our regular meeting of September 14th. Are there any comments, questions, or suggested corrections to the minutes of September 14th? Give everyone a minute. I would be willing to entertain a motion to approve unless everyone needs more time.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Do I hear a second?
So moved.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. John?
Sorry, yes.
Good, thank you. All right, next, meeting minutes of our special meeting of September 28th. Comments, questions, or corrections to these minutes? Yes,
Question,
trustee
we
Pellegrini.
had talked about whether someone should vote on minutes where they weren't there. Probably something we also should add to the bylaws, maybe,
Sorry, what was that?
Something.
whether I should vote on it just because I wasn't there.
Mm.
Okay.
Not a huge issue.
My impression is that not being present at a meeting doesn't automatically invalidate your right to vote on any motion, including that of approving the minutes of a previous meeting, even if you weren't there. I'd say the only thing provided in our bylaws that you shouldn't be voting on is where there's a matter of conflict of interest.
Okay.
So I think under our current rules, it's certainly acceptable. You may choose to abstain if you wish, but you're not forbidden from doing it. That's my impression.
Sounds good.
Although, how would you know the accuracy of what happened in the
Right.
meeting?
That's the right thing.
Any further?
Obviously, if you were
Yeah.
on Zoom or something,
Yeah.
you could watch it, but otherwise, but either way.
Any further discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of September 28th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Thank you. All right, next, the minutes of the special meeting of September 29th. Any questions, comments, or corrections?
We would like to strike A.
Yeah, we are gonna strike A because to be consistent with the other
Mhm.
interviews,
I did
do board questions.
actually strike. Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
it's
not
just
sure
not
what
on
I
this
did.
copy.
That's okay.
Just to
So,
be consistent.
yeah, motion
It's
to
unique,
strike
but
5DA.
Okay.
Heading 5.
A, yes, yes,
So,
certainly, yeah, I see, for consistency,
Yes.
yes.
right.
All right,
Since we
so on
included
the,
it for the other candidates.
right, on the minutes of September 29th, trustee Negus moved,
Yeah,
or,
well.
or trustee,
Yeah, I
Hill.
sent that
Yeah.
item to her versus on a Gmail,
And then-
Okay.
and she agreed, and then obviously this was a,
right, and then I had the previous version, all right. So trustee Hill moves, we should work with the minutes as that came to the meeting though. So trustee Hill moves to strike item 5DA. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
I,
Aye. All right, All right, finally,
The baby's voting.
yes,
I mean, she is. But then we still
Yes.
need to
Approve the minutes.
approve the
yes.
minutes.
oh yes, so that, we had the motion to strike that, we still need a motion to approve the minutes with that, change. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, second? Okay, trustee Negus, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Okay, 3.
All right. So that's passed. All right, motion, rather, we move on to the minutes of the special meeting of October 6th. Okay. Questions, corrections? Minutes of the October 6th. I think it should have been in your packet. Got it?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Accept as presented.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next we move on to visitor comments. Do we have any comment from our visitors this evening? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to item 6, the revenue and expenditure report. The city shared with us both a revenue and expenditure report and also a report on the current status of the library fund. These numbers in front of us, first of all, are there any questions from the board that we would like to bring back to the city regarding revenues and expenditures for the past month or year to date? No questions? Very good. We'll move on to the library fund report. This balance sheet for the city of Hillsdale for the library fund for the period ending September 30th shows the library's total assets as $443,937.81. Total liabilities, $527.19. Ending fund balance of $444,465, and finally total liabilities and fund balance $443,937.81. Our net of revenues versus expenditures for the 22-23 year was $78,107.28. Are there any questions about these figures? Yes, Trustee Palladino.
I would like to know how the proportion of investments to simple holdings and checking account is determined. I mean, especially with interest rates now, it seems like we would invest that in something safe at least, rather than just having it sit there.
Okay. That's a question I can direct to the city. So to break that down, under our assets, we have listed checking account common, $262,595.41, checking account accounts payable, $347.11, cash on hand, $50, finally investments, $180,945, and basically you're asking why this proportion between just what's in the checking account versus what's in investments. How is that determined?
Right.
Okay.
We're looking at, we've already made $2,700 in interest more than we've expected,
Mm-hmm.
which seems great, but if we could invest another $200,000 and double that figure, that'd be
Right.
awesome.
So, and the question for me then is how much basically does the city advise us to keep in the checking account? On whose advice essentially have these investment decisions been made, which I simply don't know.
It might be a matter of law or policy that the city has
So
adopted.
that's absolutely something we can follow up with the city, and I intend to do that.
It doesn't seem like there needs to be much in the checking account at all, because we already have everything budgeted and we're already saving every year.
Mhm.
So it seems like having extra cash on hand, I mean, a decent amount might be good for a crisis, but.
Exactly. Thank you. Any further questions or discussion of that point?
Just
Yes,
to make sure I get
trustee
it
McGee.
clarified, trustee Palladino is asking how the city decides the amount in the checking account versus investments.
Yeah.
That's essentially it, okay.
And depending on their answer, of course, we might follow up and propose that perhaps we put more from the checking account into our investments, if that's an option. That's, it's just an idea at this point. We need more details from the city about how that's being handled. Thank you. All right, any other questions or discussion of that item? All right, seeing no further questions. We'll move on to circulation report. I was able to locate the circulation reports in our library software. The reports I shared with the board were just raw reports exported straight from the software. I didn't do any rearranging of the numbers. It's just what came straight out for activity both by item location and material type in August and September. I didn't have any comments or questions about those figures, but I thought we really ought to have it in the minutes and have it on the public record, that data, in case we ever need to recur to it with any questions. Are there any questions arising from these figures or any comments anyone would like to make? From the circulation reports I shared prior to the meeting. And of course, once a director is in place, we'll have somebody on the ground that will be able to ask more concrete questions about it.
Just for the record, I
Yes.
don't see where I got those.
Okay, so on the agenda that I shared for the meeting, in the document under.
That's fair, I thought you sent a separate.
Oh, no,
email.
no, yeah,
Sorry.
they were attachments to the agenda document.
Oh, we don't have this, I
Yes.
see. Okay.
Oh, yes, forgive me. Yeah, so I listed,
It was on
I,
the Gmail.
it was in the Drive doc on the agenda that was posted, yes, that I emailed everyone. I didn't print out all the stacks of papers, I figured, which is why I sent an email around prior to the meeting saying, hey guys, here's what I'm printing out and bringing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alright, I'm ready to move on to program stats, if everyone's satisfied with what they've seen in the circulation report. Alright, so, program stats, as shared with me by Heidi, looking at, September of this year. Looks like we've had steady attendance at Lego Club, Sit and Stitch, Story Time, Little Bookworms has continued to be incredible. 116 attendees in September. Yoga with Rhonda, Craft in a Bag. I will note one thing Heidi shared with me towards the bottom under other stats, Tudor.com and Mango Languages. Heidi reports that we don't have anything, there was no data for September. She got back to me and said the figure for September is again 0. So I would suggest that we investigate what our current arrangement is with that service.
Yeah.
And whether we want to promote it more. Yes, and I believe a member of our audience could probably tell us.
It is free, Woodlands pays
Okay.
for it.
Okay,
And it is something when I was going out and talking to, the Hillsdale Exchange Group,
mhm,
the, Jefferson Township and Hillsdale Township, something that I pushed, and when we give out new library cards, we also give an informational packet with that highlighted on it too. I just don't think that there's a lot of people in our community that are interested in learning new languages, we did push it at the schools too, so that the schools are aware that this is free service with a library card. But that's something that the new director could probably push out a little bit more too, and I know that Heidi made some Facebook posts about it too,
Good.
when I was here.
Thank you very much.
Was that about tutor.com and Mango both, or?
Just tutor.com.
Okay.
Mango, numbers are pretty,
Oh,
oh, sorry, I had it backwards.
Well, that's what, okay, that's what I thought, when you said
Yeah.
about the languages.
Mango is high, tutor is not. And I think they have a 24-hour, available, like, tutors that tutor.com pays for, that you can log in and talk to people, but it is a little tricky to navigate and get into it. I've used it a couple of times and it's not the most user-friendly.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I had it backwards.
It's okay. But to confirm, tutor.com is free through our Woodlands
Mhm.
membership.
It is,
Yes.
yeah, both are.
Good.
And,
Both are.
and Mango.
And Mango, okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments regarding our program statistics? All right. Seeing none, under communication, trustee Hill brought up Library Appreciation Month. Is there anything else you'd like to?
Well, there was a post about Library Appreciation Month, and, there was a thing about, I appreciate our library because, and I thought I would just jot down a couple of the comments from some of our patrons. It's my gateway to learning and a source of entertainment. I so appreciate a wonderful library, our wonderful librarians. It produces me I can't read, I'm sorry, it's my writing. It provides an endless supply of free books to read. And another one was that I'm appreciative for their incredible, helpful, friendly staff. So I thought I'd just share some of the positive things that some of
Thank
the
you very much.
patrons wrote on that.
Lovely, thank you.
Great, you put those on Facebook?
Yeah.
All right, next is item 10, old business. Number A, under this Dollar General Youth Literacy Grant, trustee Hill and I met with Heidi to pick out what the backpacks we will be purchasing from the Early Childhood Resource Center. Between receiving less money than we applied for and the cost of the items increasing, we only purchased 25 of those items. We ordered 25 of those items for a total of $1,983.75. That order is in. We are still waiting for the items to get here. When they do, we can circle back with Heidi to discuss cataloging and circulation, among other things, and trustee Hill can correct me on any details, but I believe we agreed that we for one thing, we were only going to put a single barcode on the backpack as a whole, for example, rather than barcoding every little item that came into it, which is something our vendor rep brought up, which when I spoke with her, and I didn't think we would go for that. And also, we thought there would be an inventory list attached to each item so that we can check them all before they're checked out, check it all before they're checked back in. I think at other institutions, we had seen a form, like an agreement form that the family signs before they take the backpack out. I think our tendency was to say we probably don't need something like that. Heidi didn't think it would be necessary, but once we have them and we're making cataloging decisions, when we get back with Heidi, we can discuss that further. But for now, what we did is we picked out which backpacks we would purchase, so they're all 25 unique sets. So each backpack, each of the 25 is going to have different things in them.
And there were different topics,
yes.
like social
Right.
or a music-oriented one or a math-oriented one. So we picked ones under each category and to kind of keep it equal. And I also checked with Jonesville, they have backpacks to see what their policy was, and they did not have their patrons sign a separate policy. And everything was checked out one's barcode to make it easier, but their librarian did check each item when it came back. They had a couple different backpacks. One was like a set of 3 books in each backpack for level learning, so that'd be an easy thing to check in and out.
Yeah.
The other ones that they had through STEM or STEAM were more complicated, but they said they did checked those out, and they also had a replacement price by it, so if
Yes.
something was missing, the person who checked it out knew what the replacement would cost.
Yeah.
So, and they laminated those cards inside, so that's
Yeah.
George addressed, yeah. So I
And-
just thought I'd check to see what other libraries in our district, what they're doing, or in our area, what they're doing with backpacks such as that, but they didn't have these specific types of backpacks, but, similar concept.
Great, thank you.
And we also discussed, whether we could check with Early Childhood Resource Center to find out if they can find from the vendor or the manufacturer whether there is a cost broken down for the items in the backpack, so we could assess direct replacement costs for those items. I don't believe we've received that information, so we should probably follow up about that.
And just to be clear, you do plan to, get back together with Heidi to work on cataloging?
Yes, once they've
Right.
arrived,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and in fact, actually, our Verso rep, when I spoke with her, said, once we have an order, we can even actually do cataloging. She said, we're probably going to be doing original cataloging, not copy cataloging, because it's doubtful these exist as items in WorldCat with an existing catalog record.
Exactly.
But she can walk us through that, so if we have a description of the item and we have the software pulled up in front of us, if one of us sits down with Heidi and is on the phone with the Verso rep, we could actually probably do the original cataloging with her items, and she said she would be agreeable to that. So that's something we could do in the near future. Right, any questions from other board members about that? Thank you. All right, number B, if that's not a, letter B, building issues. Laura Surgeon with the city reported to me that the suppression system was tested and passed. DPS was working on 2 manholes in the parking lot, working on fixing doors and repairing rust. I followed up and asked in DPS's opinion, is there any further work on the building that needs to be done? And she said no, there doesn't appear to be any other outstanding issues. Are there any questions or comments about that?
So are you asking Laura Surgeon, if
Yes.
there's any further work? And she
Yes,
said no.
and she said in their assessment, there's no further work that needs to be done at this time.
So did DPS actually fix those things, or that's on their list to fix?
She said fixing.
Fixing, that's it.
Yes, so I can go back and look at my communication with her and I can
That's fine.
follow
I
up.
just wondered if they were already fixed. I know
Yeah.
some of the doors were an issue.
Yeah, I directly copied her language, so fixing the present
Okay.
progressive. Yeah. Any further questions about that?
Did we get a cost? Is DPS paying for this? I can't imagine that.
I can find out the cost of the work and where that's coming out of.
Okay.
Yeah, shall I do that?
Well, we have to approve over a certain dollar amount, correct? Or
That's-
have we already, did we pre-approve these? I thought we tabled the doors and repairing rust when it came up.
I don't.
Did we table that?
Yeah.
It was not tabled, it was approved that, full construction, do the outside repairs in the corner from the storm.
Right.
But DPS was going
I see.
to do the rust maintenance work on the
Yeah.
exterior doors that needed it. And they have access to the library's line item
Right.
accounts, so they'll take their receipts from Zelda's or wherever,
Okay,
and they will, charge probably our maintenance line item, the expenses, and then DPS is contracted every year, $2,000 they get from our fund, so then their services are free, so they're not charging, they should not be charging us labor.
nice,
Okay.
great.
Great, okay, thank you. Does anyone want me to follow up and ask for individual costs for those items, or just, okay, good. All right, next item, the sprinkler replacement. I followed up to ask about that. In fact, on the day I followed up to ask about that, I was told they were in the building getting it done. So as far as I'm aware, that work has been completed to everybody's satisfaction. Do we have any further questions about that? Any further
And that
follow-up?
bill has been paid by Tina?
Yes.
Okay.
let's see, it's, yeah, Premier, their work should be done, they should be all paid up, as far as I'm aware. Is there any further follow-up about that we would like to pursue? Okay. Seeing none, moving on to item D, proposed revisions to the bylaws. So, on the, in the packets I printed out, there's a slight matter of confusion, to everybody's surprise, I'm sure, which is when I was double checking about our bylaws as currently posted. And on the website, if you look under the information on the website, there's the bylaws posted separately on their own, but they also appear in the policy book, the overall library policies book. And the bylaws as they appear on their own on the website, and the bylaws as they appear in the handbook, in our policies book, are currently different.
Oh, no.
How old is
So-
the handbook?
Which
Well,
one's more?
my,
Which one's more current? I'm guessing the one on the web is more current.
I would actually, you would think that,
Yes,
but,
I remember Ricky Freeman had been working on some with
Yes.
just, consistency with the way things were lettered and numbered.
Yes. But I pulled both versions essentially. So in the printout I gave you, there's one I labeled current A and one I labeled current B.
Yes.
Current A is the version as it appears on its own on the website under the library bylaws, and current B is the one as it appears in our policies book. Now, two points of difference I see is that under Article 3, Section 1, in current A, it says regular meetings shall be held every month. On
Oh, yeah.
version B, it says shall be held 6 times a year.
Okay,
Yes,
I remember that, I was on
Yes.
the board when that, I was on the board when it was every month.
Mhm.
When I was off and came back on, they had changed it to every other, because I
Yep.
felt like there wasn't enough business each month. I think we quickly learned there is enough each
Right.
month with finance, and then obviously with changing of directors and
Yes.
staff changes.
yes.
Wasn't.
But they had changed it, so if they didn't need a meeting, they could skip and do every other.
Exactly.
So they
But I
did
don't-
change it back to every year?
Yes,
Or-
because, no, I recall, this was after I joined as well, that we were only meeting every other month. And then within 6 months of my joining, we did vote to put it back on every month,
It just wasn't.
which,
Which is typical of most boards around the
Yes,
city, whether
sure.
it be BPU or anything
Sure.
else, EDC, they all meet.
and then the order of meetings change. You'll see, for example, in current A, there's no section for visitors' comments under the order of regular meetings. And under current B, and you'll see at the bottom it says amended April of 2021, there is a call to order, roll call, visitors' comments,
Yeah, there's a lot of different.
reports. So there is a substantial difference, and there's no board comment in version A either. So there's a substantial difference in the order of business for regular meetings, and I think, so version B is inaccurate in that we are now meeting monthly, and when we made that change, this document wasn't updated. But it's more accurate in its statement of the order of business. And I'm sure we could go back, so my suspicion is that document B, which is what's currently embedded in the policies handbook, is actually the more current one, but when we voted to meet every other month again, that change was not made in the bylaws. So, for now, setting aside this whole question of adopting a revised set of bylaws in toto, for now, I would entertain a motion to to standardize the bylaws as publicly posted by making sure what is posted, the bylaws as posted separately and the bylaws as posted in handbook are the same document. That document be a copy of what currently appears in the policy book, and that document be slightly altered to state the regular meeting shall be held every month, to be in accordance with what we are in fact actually doing. So
Okay.
I will put the motion out there.
And I'll second it.
All right, discussion.
Just for clarity, this is a motion stating that we would put current B
Yes,
in both locations.
yes.
With the slight edit to say that we meet once a month.
That we meet every month, and that's an alteration that was already, this is not a new alteration, this is all an alteration that was voted on a couple of years ago now, and just never actually put in.
And can I call it current B?
You may, since that's how I labeled it in your packets and that's how we discussed it. But just in the minutes, make sure to note that when the version we are calling standard now and want to regularize is the version that currently appears in the policies book online. So again, on the website, the board, yes, so I pulled both of these from the website.
Okay.
So if you go to the website, under About, you'll see our policies book posted and our bylaws posted. So under About, there's the HCL policy manual and the HCL board bylaws posted separately. The one posted separately is just the bylaws, is the older version. The newer version is embedded in the manual as posted, and that's the one that we need to also put under
Okay.
separately under the bylaws. So it matches.
Okay, if I could say something,
Please.
it's correct in some ways, but then Article 1 membership, the provisions of chapter 2.48.020,
Yes.
is completely incorrect.
Yes, that's a long-standing issue, that currently what's in the municipal code as findable online doesn't match this line, chapter 2.48.020, which is something we discovered when we were working on our revisions. So given that it is not a substantial change to the bylaws, but simply a correction of accuracy, I would entertain a subsidiary motion to add to this motion that in addition to the other suggested changes, Article 1 be altered to accurately reflect where these provisions are found in the municipal code.
Okay, I gotta back up a little bit.
Okay, it's okay.
Current B with
Yes.
section 1 being changed to Article 3, section 1.
Okay, I've made a subsidiary motion.
Oh, that was a motion? Okay,
I
I'll
see.
second it.
Okay. Any further discussion of the subsidiary motion? Yes, trustee Paladino.
Are you suggesting that you take the language from 1.1 of your current revision, or you just changed that just for clarity?
Yeah, yes, actually,
Just
let's not
chapter
say,
two,
make it
dissent.
accurate, let's explicate that, thank you. So, to be accurate, currently, the provisions for membership of the library board appears as findable online under Chapter 2, Division 7 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Hillsdale.
Which is, you're using the wording from the proposed document.
Right, and that wording reflects what you'll actually find online if you look up our municipal code.
Yeah, Municode has issues.
Yeah, I'm not even going to get into how difficult it is to navigate that site.
Yes, it's.
But that would be strictly accurate. All right,
Okay,
so,
I'm sorry to bog us down with just like trying to get this written in the right order. So
That's fine.
there was a first motion,
right,
and then there was a
yes.
subsidiary.
So I made a subsidiary motion to alter the main motion.
Okay.
And the subsidiary motion was strictly to explicate Chapter 2, Division 7 of the Code of Ordinances, put that in Article 1. So we still need, we're having discussion on the subsidiary motion, we still need a vote to approve that subsidiary motion unless there's further discussion. All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we will now return to the main motion, which is that we take the version currently appearing in the policy book, we make that standard in both locations with the proposed changes, which is to say to Article 1 membership and also to Article 3 meetings to specify that we are in fact meeting every month. Okay, Trustee Palladino.
Looks good. Two questions. I wonder if we should make a policy in the future of including when things were amended and then amended back. The city laws do that. They show you, amended in 2007, re-amended in 2020 or whatever. The second thing is just the formatting so that new business is on a separate line as well as board comment.
Yes, a minor
Just-
formatting.
Yeah, so it doesn't say
correction.
old business new.
Old business, new business board comment. Yeah, that's just a, and I believe minor formatting corrections
That
can
can be
be,
done,
that can be
yeah.
undertaken anytime.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have communications on that. Oh, yes, we do. No, we don't. On it.
That's
We
true,
have comments, but not communications.
yes,
That's probably, no, that's not reports, that's our reports.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't have director's report on it.
right, it's just called reports, yes.
So would we like circulation report, director's report,
Revenue expenditure report.
and communications?
Right. Now, the question is, right, there were only a couple of matters I wanted to alter for strict accuracy. But the question is, if there are any further changes, see, this is why I created a revised bylaws document, is for this, all these reasons, plus others. But I would like to immediately correct certain matters of strict accuracy and also the matter of how frequently we meet being something we already voted on. But other alterations we might see as being necessary to this document, I think would have to wait for a subcommittee to propose them and for them to be publicly posted ahead of time.
That's right, based on our change last
Right.
year.
So
yes.
the only changes, I think the only changes we can vote to make right now are implementing changes that were in fact already approved.
Okay.
Or in this case, simply altering language to accurately reflect the municipal code.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion of that motion?
Okay, so the motion currently being voted on
Yes,
is the original motion.
yes, the main
Okay,
motion,
Thank you.
yes.
Well, and the subsidiary.
Right, and the
Well,
subsidiary
tied in,
is
but
tied into that, and that's already approved that that's part of the main motion now,
Right.
yes. All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Now, we move on to the draft document I have shared with the board. As stated in my communications prior to the meeting, I don't intend to seek a vote to approve this document at this time. This is a draft that I formulated, that I ran by our secretary for her input, that I ran by the city attorney for his input. The version you see now is based on my own research as well as the recommendations of the city attorney. And I will open this up for question or discussion. Yes, Trustee Hill.
I would say under amendments that we need to follow the adding or amending library policies policy as referenced in our other documents. We talked about, that was the
Right,
policy George and I worked on, and that
Yes.
was approved, but it doesn't mention
Right.
that in this
Right.
document. And we need to
so
follow-
a clause, specifying the
that we need to
policy
follow.
for creation of new policies procedure that we came up with. Yeah, it's in the policies document, Laura, you can, you can look
Because-
it up.
And it no
Yeah.
longer states the number of days. Our original document didn't say the number of days prior to the board meeting, or am I
Let's
not
see.
remembering
You had to
that
give a
correctly?
few weeks' notice, yeah. If it was a
It's like
substantial
7 days
change.
or 9
Officers.
days or something.
General,
Fire
yes,
department
section
too.
2, so Article 6, section 2 of the current bylaws says, "The bylaws may be amended by a majority vote of members present to an official meeting of the board, provided the amendment was included in the call for the meeting." That's all the current bylaws actually say. It's provided the amendment was included in the call for the
Where's
meeting.
this?
Oh, just on the second page, under Article 6,
Oh,
general.
B, okay, right.
Yeah, Article 6, Section
Don't
2.
do that anymore.
Yeah. So in fact, as far as I can tell, our
Okay.
current bylaws are actually less specific about the necessity for a lead time for public visibility. But I would certainly be open to adding a clause to Article 1.5 to refer to the policy including the, public lead time, et cetera.
Okay, also on 2.8, under powers and duties, you have, the document says that we present an annual report to the mayor and the city council.
Yes.
I don't believe the board presents it, I believe the director does that with an annual report that she presents to us and we approve and vote on different things such as officers, but we've never done that presentation, that's the director responsibility.
Could you
to the city
read,
council.
What?
Could you read that? I didn't look that up, 397.207.
MCL 397.207, certainly, we could look that up.
How it states it.
Is it a state law?
397.207,
That's what we're
yes.
referring to,
So this is 207, yes. The governing board, so this is under the 1877 Act, 164. The governing board shall annually report to the city council on the money received from the library fund and from other sources, how the money has been expended and for what purposes, the number of books and periodicals on hand, the number added by purchase, gift, or otherwise during the year, etc. So according to state law, actually, the board ought to be presenting the annual report that we get from the director is something we should be bringing to the city council. So that's one of the things I discovered in my research leading up to these revisions that we hadn't been doing previously.
Because as it is now, the director is always reported to the city manager, and the financial person has those things approved
Right.
before going on.
Right.
My understanding of what's presented to the mayor and the city council.
So I added this because I discovered this is a standard clause in library bylaws, and it is based directly on the Establishing Act in the state law, that it specifically says the governing board shall annually report to the city council. Yes, trustee
Do you
Palladino.
think, how would this play out in practice? Do we compile it, approve it, the secretary just emails it, includes it in the packet? Are you gonna present a report? Are we gonna send the director in our place?
So, obviously, I think the bylaws should be as minimal and direct as possible. They should just put out the requirement. As for the procedure for how such a report ought to be presented, I would envision that the statistics themselves would be compiled and presented to the board by the director, and that the board would then turn around and provide, after our annual meeting, would provide the annual report to the city council, and possibly the president and the director would go to the next council meeting, and there would be an item where they would stand up and say, it's our job to annually present these statistics to you. Here's the rundown. Do you ladies and gentlemen have any questions?
I was gonna say, as you as the board president, would you be prepared to answer those questions?
Right,
I think
and
that's something.
I think that's something that
I also
yeah.
believe in every other city, and you may know more, Stephanie, every other city group that reports to the city council, it's the director of each group, whether it's EDC, BPU, DPS, their board doesn't report to the city council. So city policy is not the same,
No.
and we're a city organization, or a city library, not a state library.
I was gonna say, and in my head, then there may be a random board, because some of them do only meet like twice a year. There may be a random board that does report differently, but in my head, it is typically the directors that are going and making presentations.
So that's something we can research and ask.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. The only thing I can say is that the state law says, and this isn't about state libraries, it is city, village, and township libraries. So it applies to our type of library, that the governing board shall annually report to the city council, X, Y, and Z.
Which could be by way of the director.
Yes, exactly. Now,
we can
the other thing is the board can deputize the director to undertake that. But I would say if, it would be certainly appropriate for both the president and the director to attend the meeting at which those statistics are presented.
Okay, the other thing that I noted was under officers, section 4, president.
Yeah.
I believe it says, the way it's worded now is that the president prepares the meeting agenda. And again, I feel like that's something the director does. The director prepares the agenda. I mean, obviously the director's gonna prepare the director reports, but things like circulations and other reports, a president won't have access to without meeting with the director, so it's just back and forth, back and forth. And furthermore, I would just like to cite that in every other institution in the city, again, BPU, ZBA, EDC, they all follow that with the director does the agenda, and also as well as community functions like hospice and community foundation, the director prepares the agenda, not the president.
Thank you. My only thought there was the president, as the chair of the body, ought to be undertaking that responsibility, obviously with the input of the director, because the director is the one with the reports, so the president would obviously have communication with the director prior, saying, please provide the reports for this month, what new business needs to be brought before the board. I thought it appropriate for the president as the chair of the body to undertake that responsibility, as I understand it to be standard in chairs of governing bodies, that they have responsibility for setting the agenda of that body. I do know that, again, that responsibility is typically deputized to the chief paid administrative officer of the department being supervised by that board. Any other thoughts on that? Yes,
Yeah, I just
Palladino.
add that technically under the city rules, it's the council and mayor's responsibility to create the agenda, but once again, in almost all cases, we send things to the clerk and she's the actual compiler. But it might be actually easier for the director to send you stuff and you're the compiler to take something off of her plate, but if she's willing to do it all, then we can just continue
Okay.
our
But
current
the question
practice
is
of
what-
deputizing.
The question is, yes, and it states under the responsibilities of the director, if we skip to, the director shall assist the board of trustees in administrative duties as delegated.
Okay.
And one of those delegated responsibilities can be the compiling of the agenda
Right.
prior to each meeting. But I think the lawful responsibility for the agenda should be with the board that can be delegated as a task to the director. But for example, in cases where we don't, in all cases, we ought to have a president or an acting president. Sometimes we don't have a director, as in this case. So I think that it ought to be clear in cases when a director isn't present, who has the lawful administrative responsibility for setting the agenda of the body. I think that should be the chair of the body, which is the president. Although I do believe that, of course, in many cases, it's both necessary and appropriate for the director as the chief paid administrative officer to undertake that as a delegated responsibility. So we could certainly consider making that more explicit in the bylaws, but I did think it necessary that the responsibility of those duties be clear and that ultimately rests with the board, regardless of what is delegated to the director. Any further discussion of that
In the
point?
Michigan Library Trustee Manual, it specifically says the board maintains indirect responsibility, and it is the director's job.
Indirect responsibility of,
Things like board policy, budget, and meeting agendas, and the board keeps in touch with the library through the director's regular reports.
forgive me, may I see that clause?
You have a book as well. I gave you the most current.
Oh, I didn't,
Oh.
I haven't brought it, forgive me, yes.
I mean,
Thank you.
I'm sure there's, I've highlighted, it's more in the middle section about the trustee's
For
responsibility.
adoption, yes.
To me, it's the director's
actual
job to run the
administration.
library, and we are overseeing and
Of course.
guiding, not developing.
Yes, the board maintains indirect responsibility of the library, of the operations of the library through adoption. I've inserted that clause, forgive me. The line is, the board maintains indirect responsibility through adoption of strategic plan, policies, and budget. My understanding in this clause about library of administration is the board maintains indirect responsibility of the library. But when we talk about the operations and bylaws of the board, we're talking about the operations of the board. And I believe that the officers of the board ought to have direct responsibility for the administration and meetings of the board, including the setting of the agenda. Which is, again, yes.
To me, that seems to make sense just from a structural point of view, like that the board is is the boss of the director.
Yes.
But definitely and obviously with input from the director, but
Yes.
it also seems courteous to not make the director do this extra thing with the monthly board meetings. But,
Potentially,
That-
yeah.
Potentially.
I think this is something that we can just talk with the director about, and I think by
Yeah.
a majority vote, we can determine that she'll take the duty of
Certainly,
preparing it
and
if she
that-
wants it.
Right. Yeah.
But it does make sense from the standpoint of if no one's here and it says that the director is gonna compile the report, but we don't have a director,
Mhm.
that could cause trouble.
Okay. So everybody's points very well taken. Thank you, Karen. And that's definitely something we can revisit if in a future meeting we're actually moving to approve a version of these. Unless there is other questions or points to be made about that particular point, which is under Article 4.2. Were there any other points of comment or question? Yes, Trustee Palladino.
The only, these look great, but the only thing I'm wondering is if we should have, especially under, I don't know if it'd go under execution of contracts, that there needs to be a majority vote for spending over a certain threshold.
Well, a majority, there needs to be a majority vote to approve anything.
Well, the director can normally spend a few $100s, right? But there seems to be some threshold and we don't really know.
Can you find the article under which you think that would,
I'm not sure if it should be execution of contracts,
okay,
but it might be, if the director wants to spend more than $200 on repairs or.
well, if you're speaking of at what threshold does the director need to bring something to the library for
Yeah.
approval, essentially?
Yeah.
That would lie under Article 7, so that would
Okay.
be under Article 7, in descriptions of the duties of the director. So under 7.2, duties and authority shall have sole charge of the administration under the director and of the library under the direction and review of the board of trustees, etc. So we have this enumeration of the basic duties of the director. Now one of the clauses in here is for the operation of the library under the financial conditions set forth in the budget approved by the board. And so we could potentially add, if we thought it prudent and necessary, add an article under Article 7, specifying that the director, if undertaking an expense above a certain threshold, will bring that to the board for approval. So that's something we could put in the bylaws, or it's simply a policy we could adopt separately. I would say my first instinct is to say getting into the weeds with something of that specificity.
Yep.
Maybe that's a policy we could adopt as a policy, but not necessarily something that have to go in the bylaws.
Yep.
Which I think are more basic and more general in covering the powers, responsibilities, etc. of the board and the director generally.
Yes.
So that's my first instinct to that, instinctive response to that proposal. But again, that's something we could consider when we go back to this between now and the next meeting. Any other questions or
I had
comments?
something under
Yes.
conflict of interest.
Yes.
It looks like now the document speaks of conflict of interest solely financial, and I think we're leaving out the phrase that was before, must in general avoid situations in which there is financial, personal, or political interest.
Let's see, so, in the current,
Conflict of interest isn't just financial, it could be personal or political.
in the current, section 3, library board members must in general avoid situations in which their personal interests conflict with the needs of the library. This extends particularly to decisions involving financial transactions entered into by the library. Any situation in which the personal interest of a trustee might be served or financial benefits gained at the expense of library users or at the expense of the institution itself. Direct conflicts exist whenever there's a proposed transaction or arrangement in which a trustee has any actual or potential involvement, interest gain, or relationship. Okay?
Do you see what I mean? That it
Yes,
shouldn't just be a
yes.
financial
So,
conflict
and
of
then
interest regarding a
in-
contract or personal financial gain,
Mhm.
it should be personal political interest.
And in the proposed language, it says, no member or his or her immediate family shall benefit financially or create the appearance of conflict of interest or commitment or of impropriety. Is being considered for a contract or financial relationship. Okay. And my impression, based on my research and on our city attorney's recommendations when he reviewed the document, is that the legal requirement of conflict of interest is that we exclude the possibility of anyone benefiting financially. My impression is that that is what's required by law for us when we have a statement of conflict of interest. It specifically means nobody can benefit financially. However, I do take your point that the bylaws as stated say more generally avoid situations in which their personal interests
Personal
conflict
and political.
with the needs of the library. My problem, I suppose my issue with this phrasing, personal interest, is I'm afraid it seems broad and vague. I'm afraid that somebody could be accused of allowing their personal interests to influence their decision-making on board for any number of reasons that aren't financial. Whereas my understanding is the necessity of a conflict of interest clause is that we're making clear that nobody or their immediate family is benefiting financially from their relationship with the library. My impression is that that's what's both legally necessary and also what's clearest. And I think the phrase personal interests, again, I think it's too broad. I think it's too vague. That's what I would say, but I would open it up to counterpoint.
Stephanie, you often have good input, what do you think?
You guys, I'm afraid I have to step out, I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for staying past.
Yep.
Do you want to continue on her notepads? since
Yeah.
you're second, or what's
Do you
your
need it?
comfortable level?
Yeah. Do you need that? All
I
right.
can just,
Okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
Pick
I was
up
just
and
like writing down which ones we were discussing.
Oh my gosh,
All
you're
right.
keeping track
Thank
of
you.
all this discussion, you're awesome,
No,
thank
like,
you.
Not with all the details, but
All
like
right.
which ones we were discussing.
So just note what time she left then.
Sorry
So
about that.
Secretary Negus departed at 6:05 p.m. and Vice President Palladino took over taking the minutes.
So, looking at the way the policy was previously written versus the proposed writing of the policy, I'm gonna hazard a guess, and I'm just saying this simply thinking about it from the perspective of like nonprofit boards
Mm-hmm.
and our policy manuals and things like that. Both of them are kind of left up to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we're going to put something in there about conflict of interest, we really need to be very specific when it comes to it. And I'm simply saying that because I'm not disagreeing with either of your posts, but like when we're saying, you know, the appearance of impropriety, under whose direction, what is impropriety to me may not be impropriety to you.
Mhm.
And so we just need to be very, very clear when it comes to it.
So, go ahead.
I can see both arguments when it comes to saying just leave it financial versus expand on it further, because there could be other ties that would be improper, that would look bad for the library, point
Mhm.
blank. So,
would you, I would feel comfortable leaving out personal, but I think personal still needs to be in there so that we stay with library law.
yes.
To clarify, when you say stay with library law, what do you mean by that?
Well, we just need to follow library law and the Constitution. And if there's any things brought forward to the board and decisions are made that would go against that, that needs to be our first priority.
How does that pertain to conflict of interest?
Following a political persuasion versus the law.
I would be uncomfortable even implying in our bylaws that, let me think about that. I think making a broader statement about the necessity to follow the Constitution, to follow the law, might fall under an ethics statement of some sort that we might consider and adopt. But again, I think if what we're trying to guard against is we're saying, well, a board member cannot bring political or philosophical convictions to their decision making that contradict the Constitution or law, I think we're getting too philosophical. I think it's getting too vague. I think it's getting too far from the legal necessity of a statement of conflict of interest, which is, again, that legal necessity exists to prevent board members from benefiting financially from their relationship with the institution. Yes, Trustee Palladino.
I'd be happy just to put under membership, even one of the first things would be, we could just include the oath, right? Like in the Constitution, it includes as one of the first things under the presidential power that he's gonna swear this oath.
Mhm.
We've all taken
Which
that
we've all
oath, so we could just include that language, which is, I think, support the Constitution, state laws. It might even say something about the city of Hillsdale, but definitely the Constitution and the state law we take an oath to.
Where would you recommend we have that?
Probably under membership, each, probably after composition, each member shall be required. Actually, it does say that in the charter, that you can't actually take this seat if you won't take the oath.
Mhm.
So we could just include that language.
Because Appendix C of our manual has a whole thing of trustee ethics.
I was gonna say, I do like the idea of including an ethics statement.
Mhm.
And again, simply this is just going off of my working experience,
Mhm.
and I've pretty well always worked for places that are board run.
Mhm.
And there is almost always an ethics statement. And in fact, I can't think of an instance that I haven't been exposed to an ethics statement by one of my employers, so.
So the question is that something we ought to adopt as a freestanding policy, or should that be in the bylaws, in the governing document of the body?
No.
Because it strikes me that again, I did expand the language of the bylaws to include items I thought necessary that were lacking in the previous version. But I don't want to get too into the weeds regarding philosophical or ethical positions of the board that could be served by a standalone policy that we could craft and vote on and add to the policy handbook, for example. So I would say a statement of ethics, while appropriate, is something I would consider separately as its own policy rather than as an article in the bylaws. That's my first instinct.
That's something we can think about.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
And
At
that's,
this point,
and
I'm
that's
getting
something,
a little pedantic, I will totally admit that. But I'm-
that's what we're doing here,
Yeah.
is better training.
But I'm just thinking, I mean, if we're going to do something
Mm.
along those lines, we're going to have a policy of ethics for board members,
Mhm.
which I think is totally fair and totally valid. In my head, we would at least mention it under membership
Mhm.
in our bylaws. So maybe it's not the entire thing there, but it is a mention of, just like the mention of the oath that we took.
Right.
A mention that we're following this
That
ethics
should,
statement.
that's a good point to mention the oath.
So, and I'll just jump back in and say, that's something we could add to this document, that's a clause we could add to this document, when and if we have, say, a single page statement of ethics that we've voted and agreed on.
Stephanie, I agree, we should add a thing about taking the oath, because it talks about being appointed by city council, and the next step is taking the oath, and that's not mentioned in
Right,
here.
yep.
Mhm.
And actually, you're not allowed to vote at the next meeting if you haven't taken the oath
Yes.
yet.
Yep.
Mhm.
Good point, Stephanie, thank you.
Any other suggestions?
Well, it's interesting that you're worried about conflict of interest, yet under resignation and removal, it says that someone in office may be removed with or without cause. It's
Let's
like,
see.
wait a minute, you can be removed with or without cause?
In the, so
like-
that's from your board office. So that's not from the board, that's from your board
But with or
office.
without cause? Why would you remove someone
It's-
without cause?
It's, and
That sounds very
because
prejudicial.
it's possible. What that means is that somebody can make a motion to remove so-and-so from their office as secretary or as president. And they don't have to justify it, they don't have to make a public justification of it, as long as there is a majority sentiment and you can get a majority vote. So all that's making clear is that if there is a motion, I move that so-and-so be removed as president, and somebody seconds it, and they don't even try to justify it, there's no discussion, it just moves straight to a vote, that vote is still valid, even if no justification was provided. It makes clear that the board has the power to do that, because the board has the power to make a majority vote, and we can just strike that. If it's weird, we can strike that, because that's still something the board can do, because any act of the board can be ratified by a majority vote, regardless of of the extent of the discussion. So again, this is just something I lifted from standard language that I found in other documentation, but if it seems odd, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Yeah,
Where is this even written?
that's under Article 4.7, so this is specifically resignation or removal, not from the board generally, but from your office on the board.
Oh,
The resignation or removal of officers. So I could strike that. That would be fine, as far as I'm concerned, because, again, a majority vote of the members present ratifies anything regardless of how much discussion there is. Anything else on this one?
That was just some of my comments from my first go through, but.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good. All
For
right.
today.
For today, yes. Yeah. Does anyone want more time to read this thing?
We're not voting on it tonight.
No. Yeah, so my intention is to get everybody's input, go back to my subcommittee of the secretary and the city attorney, make any changes that have occurred to me or that have been suggested, then bring it back next month And at that point next month, I would say I would have something firm enough that I would want to seek a vote on it. And even if there are points in there that we would want to change in the near future, in the far future, whatever, that we adopt the thing as written or as brought to the next meeting, and then any further proposed changes to it, of course, anybody can bring anytime.
And I would also think that a new director who's just done with grad school would also have comments and things she may want to
Yeah.
add or
Okay.
correct.
Sure.
And I think her input would be helpful,
Yes.
his or her input.
Well, I mean, it's
We're
not,
about-
it's not a mystery,
We're
it's not a
about to
mystery.
give it away in 2 seconds.
Yes, all right, so if there's nothing further on that item for now? All right, very good. All right, our last item under old business is that we do have, a new director who has accepted our offer of employment. Her name is Rebecca Dobsky. She is coming to us from Brandon Township Public Library in Ortonville, Michigan, where she was working as library associate, on track to be promoted to full librarian. She is currently working on her Master's of Library and Information Science with Wayne State University. And right now, I believe she has accepted the offer from the city, and it's just pending the routine background check. And then we'll need further details from her about when she can join us. Any further comments from the board on that item?
Initially, when we asked, just so for public knowledge, when we asked her at the interview if she were to get the job, how long would it be before she could start? And I believe she said 2 to 3 weeks to give us notice,
Right.
so.
Upon offer.
Upon offer. All right, if there's no further comments on that item, the next item is the item added to the agenda, which is acquisitions and ongoing acquisitions and cataloging of materials. So the update on that is that I have gone into our vendor's site to approve purchases. So we have new materials in the building. I believe we have new materials on the way. The next question is the cataloging of the materials and getting them on the shelves. There is one staff member qualified to engage in cataloging. However, that staff member is currently, her title is page. She only works part-time, for a limited number of hours a week. When I inquired with her about undertaking acquisitions and cataloging duties, she made clear that she believed that fell outside the scope of her regular duties, since her title is page and she is not being paid accordingly, essentially. So I went on to undertake, officially purchasing materials, so they're here. I'll continue to do so long as staff members continue to add things that they want to buy. So I'm gonna check again with our staff to see if there are any further recommendations they have that I will be happy to hit approve on. But as for cataloging the materials that are here and getting them onto the shelves, I did follow up with the staff member to say, just to clarify, I just want to be sure you, temporarily, just until we get a new director, are you willing to engage in cataloging of the materials we've got? I don't have a reply from her yet. My impression is that she would prefer an adjustment in her title and salary to match those duties.
I would,
Yes.
should I make a motion or do I need to discuss?
I
Or just
think,
share?
I think you can certainly lead with a motion that can then be
Okay.
subject to discussion.
I would recommend that we give her a pay bump for when she catalogs. Clearly, right now, she's been a volunteer and is on as a page, so very low salary.
Mhm.
I would recommend, I would recommend that we pay her $20 an hour to do the cataloging. She's qualified to do it. I'm not familiar with the process, but it takes a specific skill
Oh, yes.
set and it's very involved and focused, and with her current duties, she wouldn't have time to do that
Mhm.
in addition to what she's doing. We would have to, if we agree, give her more hours and a
Mhm.
pay bump not for her page part, but for her cataloging part.
Yes.
Like so the job description and the pay would match.
Yes.
And just be short-term. I'm concerned that a new director coming on board, it would still be 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, exactly.
Possibly longer, and those books are just sitting there that patrons have been requesting. And so it would get the books in hands of people sooner. And I think when a new director comes on board, she will have so many other tasks that she needs to onboard and get used to and local activities and training. It would behoove us to offer Liz the pay bump
Mhm.
for the time she spends. And I don't know how many hours to recommend that would be, or if we just say a pay bump to catalog what's already here.
Yes.
What is your input? I spoke with Liz today, so
Okay,
I'm not
good.
speaking out of turn.
Thank you.
She was doing little bookworms, and I
Yeah.
was asked to come in and help because it was her first time doing it, but she's a great qualified librarian
Yes.
who's done it in the past, and I just came to help because I knew some of the parents and families, but, and it just helps to have a second set of hands too with snack and all the materials. But anyway, that was something she suggested. She said she had just gotten an email from you and suggested that pay bump, and she said, I'm not asking for it for all my hours, just the hours I would spend cataloging. And that certainly seemed like a responsibility and the pay should match.
Yes.
I am currently looking up labor law in regards to can someone hold dual titles with
Yeah.
dual
Right.
pay?
Oh, I
Right.
hadn't thought of that, thank you,
Yes.
Stephanie.
And that's
Even though it makes
what occurred to
logical
me.
sense, I can see wage and
Yeah.
hour coming in and being like, excuse me?
Yeah.
So,
Good point, thank you.
Yes.
Is this the
okay.
sort of thing that she could do, in a week of full-time work, she could catch up on this? Or is she gonna need to be full-time for the next 2 or 3 weeks?
I would
we
think
know?
just a day or two.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure. I mean, there's a rack of books, multiple shelves.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long it takes. Jessica, how long does it?
I could get it done in a day, but Liz is new to the system, and when I trained her, in the time it took her to do 1 book, I could do 10 books. So it probably will take her a lot longer to do it. I would say 3 to 5 days probably for Liz to do it.
I am somewhat worried that this would be a huge HR, finance problem. I'm wondering if we could can we just give her a $200 bonus
Could
or
we do a
something like that?
stipend?
Yeah.
Yeah, a stipend, something
That,
like
that
that.
might,
Yes.
that might be more complicated, but,
Oh, okay.
or less.
in my experience, typically a stipend or a one-time bonus actually is less complicated than
Okay.
what, in fact, I am struggling to find exactly what we're
Yeah.
looking for
Right.
because of the level of complication
Well,
that that would
I would
propose.
say, forgive me, Karen, did you make a motion?
No.
Okay,
I
good,
just- I
good,
was-
because I don't think we have a second on that.
I wasn't
Um,
very clear, and I wanted to see if
yeah.
everyone was in agreement before.
I think,
If it was
yeah,
a
I
good
think it's
point.
both a great idea and absolutely necessary that the work get done, and that Liz be paid appropriately for the level of work that's being done. I would say perhaps we could have a motion that we want to pay the staff member appropriately for what's going to be temporary work, and that I will inquire with the city about what arrangements can legally be made to make that happen. And then if, with the board's permission, I could be deputized to work with the city to get this person paid for this temporary work, then we can just get it done. Yeah, as long as we offer terms that she'll find agreeable. Provided that, I'd say maybe we don't go over, say, $20 an hour for,
That was the recommend, that was the amount
she herself recommended.
herself
Yeah.
mentioned.
So that's
Which I
my
didn't think was
suggestion.
out of the realm for a master's in library science person at all. I mean, I thought that was a bargain, so.
Oh, yeah.
I,
Is that a
I
motion?
believe just.
I
for
haven't
point
made,
of-
no one's made a motion yet.
Just as a point of reference, we have done a stipend in the past, you may remember
Yeah.
that, it was between Mary Hill and
Yes.
Bree when we went
Yes.
without a director.
We
did
had
give
leftover
stipends
money.
to the staff,
Yes,
when we saved money on the director, because
Yes.
they all stepped up above and beyond the call of duty.
yes.
And HR and finance did not have a problem when we did that stipend at that time. So I would assume we should be able to offer it to Liz, but we can certainly, would you like me to make a motion saying pending approval by?
By the city. So, I will entertain a motion that the president approach the city with the proposal that Liz Voorhees be provided a stipend for temporary work cataloging until until the new director is in place and ready to assume those duties, provided that said stipend not exceed pay equivalent to $20 an hour. Does that sound coherent to everybody?
I would second that.
All right, okay. Any further discussion of this idea? All right.
Thank you for wording that.
Yeah. All right, all in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. All right, we move to, Article 11, new business. So our one item of new business, voted onto the agenda for this evening is a discussion of the salaries of the staff. I will say, I reached out to the city to ask, can we see what the staff, what the staff are currently being paid, what they were being paid when they were hired, what their date of hire was, and what hours I think I asked for average hours of week they work. I have not yet received that information. So we don't have any data to work with yet. But I certainly agree this is something we should absolutely be pursuing and monitoring more closely.
I would agree, and if we're not ready to make any motion, I totally understand since we don't have the facts and
We don't have
figures.
numbers in
I would just
front of
say that I know in the past, we did have a new hire that came in that made more than some existing staff, and that was the previous director's discretion, which really caused a lot of animosity. The other thing that happened was when another person came in at one level, and then, okay, when the minimum wage came in, someone was under minimum wage, so they were raised up, but then the new person had to come in at minimum wage. And so even though this person had been here longer, the new hire came in at minimum wage, and it was the same, even though someone else had, say, 10 years of seniority. So I think we need to take some of those factors into consideration when we look at staff salaries. Like,
That's
not
one
only
reason,
longevity.
yeah. But also, yeah. Yes, trustee Pelletier.
Maybe something to add to the report every quarter, every 6 months, whatever we think necessary, or when someone hired is new, we just look at all of everyone's wages again and make sure situations like that don't occur.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how much the minimum wage increase was, but it might be like, we can't afford to do much more, but even if it's like a quarter extra an hour to show they've been here for 5 years, something would be great.
Yes. So we need data, and we need the director in place before we really move to make decisions and figuring out if we want to make any changes here with, knowing what we have with the budget we've got, what can we do?
And clearly, when the budget was made, it was at existing wages.
Yes, yes,
So
and
we need to look at that as well.
yeah, and if we do want to make adjustments, what do we mean? What do we need to move around, and what pots is that going to come out of? Any further points regarding that item? Anything we want to pursue between now and the next meeting?
So I would like to see the city's actual policy in regards to the cost of living wages, considering this is what brought about this whole discussion about our part-time staff's wages. So what is the actual policy regarding the cost of living raises? I would also like to see wherever it was written, or however, like a timeline of the precedents that was set, that other departments could gift their cost of living. However, the library was not allowed to do that. So some sort of justification for that, like why, what is the reasoning there? And obviously this is not a current motion, but if our staff are going to continue to be exempt from the cost of living increase, then maybe we put something into policy that is essentially giving them a cost of living increase.
So even if it's
Even
not
if the city doesn't, maybe
city
we can
policy,
set
it's
it
still
up.
our policy.
Yes,
Yes.
So,
And we could, in fact, and provided we make sure the money is there, we could make that retroactive,
that would be beautiful.
if we can make it happen.
The cost of living allowance that city people were given this year was 3%, am I right?
I believe so.
But that applied only to full-time staff. and
Exactly.
we
I
need
think,
to
I think
consider-
the whole,
And some of our
Yeah.
staff are at like 30 hours a week, and even though it's
And-
not
and-
full-time, it needs to be factored in.
Right,
It's
and
not
this-
like they're 1 day a week or 2 half days a week.
And I think there should, I mean, this is just me spitballing opinion at this point, but I think there should be a special provision because I believe that the only other part-time staff in the city are lifeguards in the summer at the beach.
And concession workers,
And, yeah, lifeguards, concession workers.
And maybe rough some
So
field or
that would-
umpires.
That would be more seasonal work versus part-time work.
Mhm.
So,
yeah, nobody else, as far as I'm aware, nobody else occupies a permanent part-time position. Yes?
Tyler, I think has 1 or 2 people that might be part-time.
Oh,
Thank you.
good to know.
I'll stand up for them too.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right. Okay. Any further discussion of that item? So I'll see what data the city gives me that I've already requested, and I can certainly follow up asking about wherein is it written that this gifting of cost of living raises happens, and why can't we do that? And see what answers we get.
Why can't we do that, but also why are any of our staff put in a position to feel as though it is necessary that they have to do that? I understand,
That's another good.
I understand Jessica's point as to
Yeah.
why she wanted to do that, but why are any of our department heads in a position where they feel as though they have to gift their own raises
To their
to
staff.
their staff?
Good point, thank you.
Oh,
So should do you need a motion to table for the
Um,
discussion until? you
I don't
find out
think,
more
I don't think
information?
there's any, we're not undertaking any official action,
Okay.
I'm just saying I'll ask some questions.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Good. All right, if there's nothing further on that item, ready to move to board comments. Any general comments from our members? Seeing none.
I would,
Oh,
you know, I always have something to
yes,
say.
please.
I would just like to thank Jessica again for being present, not only at this meeting and the past meetings, but all of our special meetings and interviews. I think her business expertise has saved us on several occasions when we did not know answers to questions like fire suppression or sprinkler systems, when we did not know answer to some salary questions. And even when we were voting on the last issue with what to offer and a potential other candidate, I think her business sense has really helped us a lot, and I miss that on our board. And not to be derogatory, but when we had an open position on the board, I specifically talked to Adam about, our mayor, about appointing someone with a business background. I know I'm a retired speech pathologist, we have students, we have people working for nonprofits in college. That was something we lacked on our board. And that is not what we gained on as a board member, but I think in future, it would be helpful to have someone with background in business and financial issues, because we've certainly been lacking a couple different times, and I know through none of our own faults, that's just not the strengths we bring to the table. But I thank Jessica for bringing that strength and expertise to us, because I think it's saved us on a couple motions we would have made incorrectly in the past, or some information that would have been wrong in our board minutes, so thank you, Jessica.
So someone with business, finance, so just a business and finance management
I mean, there's
experience.
just a whole, I mean, as a public school teacher, I'm not hired an aide, but I never had to work on HR protocol or policy and those kind of things, or just business decisions, maintaining buildings and those kind of things. And I don't think any of us have that expertise.
Any other comments?
I mean, that's not against any of us, nor the new appointee, but just that's a void on our board. And that was something that Jessica filled in because she did have a business degree. Any other comments?
All right, seeing no further comments, our next regular meeting should be on Thursday, November the 9th at 5 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are adjourned at 6:37 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.